What? It's not working again. What's going on? Oh, I bent a pin. Does that sound familiar to you? If so, you'd find today's switch very interesting. Welcome back to Loom Keeps. Today we are going to talk about the Gateron G Pro 3 switches. Now, G Pro 3 is their latest version of their G Pro switch. They've got a yellow, a silver, and a brown version that we carry. These are quite interesting switches, which we'll dive right into this. But before that, please do subscribe, like our videos, and comment, because we really appreciate it when you do that. Also check out our store at www.loomkeeps.com. Alright, without further ado, what makes this so interesting? On my right, you have the JWK Yellow. Take a look at the pins. These should look very familiar to you if you've built keyboards in the past. It's a very thin piece of copper, right? And there's like a little bit of a shape that they stamp into it. But generally speaking, they're quite easy to bend. Right, so if you put them in if they're even slightly bent and you put them in, there's a good chance that they'll get bent. What Gateron has done on their latest Gateron G Pro 3.0, as you can see, the pins are quite a bit thicker. I don't know if you can see it here. Put them as close as possible. Now it's interesting, on the older style switches, the pins are actually different between the left and the right. You can see the pin on the left is a lot thinner, and the one on the right is actually quite a bit thicker. And I noticed that on a lot of the other switches as well. What you see on the G Pro 3.0 is that both of these pins are now kind of very beefy, and so that should help alleviate a lot of your pin bending. Let's take a look at how much thicker they actually are. It's going to recommend me the screw gauge over here, so let's take a look. On the JWK Yellow, for the thinner, pin, it's about 0.19 millimeters, whereas the thicker pin is about 0.34, right? So it's almost like 70% thicker. So 0.19 and 0.34. Now let's look at the G Pro 3.0, 0.37. All right, yeah, so 0.37 on both. So yeah, I would say it's slightly thicker than your standard switch on the thick pin, and much thicker than the thin pin on your standard switches. So that should help alleviate quite a bit of your pin bending. That being said, every time you get new switches, always just check, because sometimes when it comes in a factory or in the packaging process, they do tend to get slightly bent. Just check all your pins, make sure they're perfectly straight, and then put them in your boards, and you should be perfectly fine. I do like this change. You can kind of see how they've done it. They've kind of folded the copper onto itself. There's a line here. So I think it's like a double layer of copper here, and that should give it a lot more strength and make it a lot less likely that you have to deal with bent pins. So kudos to Gateron for coming up with this. I hope that they'll put that into all their switches going forward. That's the Gateron G Pro 3.0. Let's pop it open and take a look inside. First off, the housing is quite tight when I take it apart. In terms of the stem design, seems pretty normal, standard stem design. You can see there's a bit of lube on it already, so these come factory lubed. Pretty standard spring, nothing fancy there. In terms of the bottom housing shape, I don't see anything drastically different either. So all in all, a pretty standard switch. The G Pros do come with a light diffuser over here. They claim that this one is a bit more frosted compared to the 2.0, so the LEDs would have a slightly different effect. In terms of materials, they feel pretty solid. I believe this is polycarbonate. Bottom is nylon. As for the stem, it used to be palm for the 2.0. For the 3.0, Gateron is playing coy in their website, and they just call it a thermoplastic, which basically doesn't tell you anything. Overall, pretty standard designs, I would say. G Pro is one of the budget lines, so I'm not surprised that there's nothing crazy going on here, but pretty solid design. Like, and for a budget switch, I like it a lot. Right? This is a very tried and true design with the window. The stem shape is fine as well, and obviously, very big fan of the pins. And I haven't had issues with the thicker pins with any of my boards thus far with hot swappable boards. So I don't think it's going to be an issue. Hopefully it will make bent pins a thing of the past. Without further ado, let's go into the test. So over here, you can see we've got our LoomKeebs custom designed switch tester. We have them in many different colors, by the way. If you guys like different colors, let us know. This is in yellow. We've got lots of crazy colors that we can try with this. But for this testing purposes, we have it in white. And here we have the Gateron G Pro 3.0 Yellow versus the JWK Yellow. We think that these two are probably one of the best budget switches out there, so we want to make sure to do a kind of comparison between the two. The JWK Yellow is immensely popular, so let's see how the Gateron G Pro 3 does against it. Next up, we have the Gateron G Pro 3.0 Silver versus the Cherry MX Silver. These are both kind of gamer-centric switches with much lighter spring weights and also reduced travel. So if you're a big gamer and you want your kind of immediate quick response, these might be the ones for you, and we'll do a comparison there as well. And lastly, we also have them in brown. So this is the Cherry MX Brown versus the Gateron G Pro 3 Brown, both of which are tactile switches, and both are very popular as well. So we are going to start with the linears. On to the linear switches. Top row here is stock. Bottom row is lubed and filmed. So let's compare between the two yellows. Gateron, JWK. Right off the bat, the Gateron is slightly lower pitched. The JWK is slightly higher pitched sound note, so it's a different sound signature for sure. But they're both kind of pleasant to my ears, so I guess it depends on your personal preference what you like better. In terms of smoothness, they're both quite good. I believe both come factory lubed. Yeah, I would say they're almost comparable between the two. And now let's take a look at stem wobble. I would say they're very close. The G Pro 3.0 seems to be slightly better to me in terms of stem wobble, but they're very similar. Now let's compare them in lubed and film form. Interesting. So the sound definitely deepens quite a bit when you lube and film them, right? So let's go with the JWK first. That's a very drastic difference. Definitely deepens the sound signature a lot. Almost sounds more like a thud than before. Very, very big difference. So let's take a look at the Gateron G Pro 3.0. It also deepens the sound signature here as well. And let's compare across the two. Yeah, definitely very different sounding switches. I do think they both sound better when they're lubed and filmed, but that's my personal preference. Let us know what you think in the comments. Let's see the feel. So I would say the JWK Yellow definitely benefits a lot more from lube and filming. The Gateron G Pro 3 is not as drastic a difference. It definitely still improves, but it's not as big a difference as I can feel with the JWK. So I think the Gateron G Pro 3.0 is already smoother to begin with. So that might be the reason. But they're both very nice after you lube and film them. From the sound, In stock form, there's a little bit of scratch when it comes to the Gateron G Pro 3.0 that I can hear. It improves with the lube and filming. So in terms of feeling, I would say there's an improvement, but it's not drastic. But in terms of sound, there definitely is an improvement in terms of the scratchiness of the switch when you lube and film them. Next up, we've got the G Pro 3.0 Silver versus the Amex Silver. So let's take a look. Right off the bat, the travel is much shorter. I believe these are 3.4 millimeters versus 4.0. And the Cherry MX Silver, very scratchy. It's just not really quite up to par against the G Pro 3.0 or the JWK in terms of the feeling. The stock Gateron G Pro 3.0 Silver is already decently smooth. There is still a hint of scratchiness, kind of similar to the Yellow, but compared to the Cherry, definitely much better. Now in the lube and film form, the Cherry MX definitely improves in terms of both feel and sound, much less scratchy. Versus the Gateron G Pro 3.0. Once you lube and film it, the G Pro 3.0 Silver, very smooth. Almost no scratchiness. There's still a slight bit, but very, very good. Now let's take a look at the sound, comparing between the two. The Gateron is a much more solid sounding switch, I think, in a lower pitch. The Cherry, very, very high pitched sound to it. Compare now to lube and filmed. So on the Gateron 3.0, I think it kind of fills out the sound a little bit more. It sounds a bit more solid, a little bit deeper. I like the lube and film version more, but it's a very different sound signature, so I think that's up to you which one you like better. But Cherry, it also deepens the sound quite a bit. But it still's got that kind of more clackier sound signature to it. Now let's compare across the Yellow and the Silver for the Gateron 3.0. Similar sound signature, but I think the pitch is slightly different. One last difference is, as you can see, the Silver is a box style switch versus the Yellow, which is not. See if that affects the stem wobble. Feels about the same to me. Compared to Cherry, oh yeah, Cherry definitely not up to par here. So Cherry is definitely the wobbliest versus the Gateron's 3.0 Silver, which is about on par with the Yellow. Next up, we've got the Gateron G Pro 3.0 Brown versus the Cherry MX Brown, which is the OG of the Tactile switches. So Tactile gang, listen up. Here is the stock version of the G Pro 3.0. Cherry. Oh my gosh, that is drastic. That's probably the most drastic one yet. Lots of scratch with the Cherry MX. You can hear it, and you can feel it, definitely. Very scratchy on the stock version. Whereas on the Gateron, it's very smooth. It sounds a lot fuller on the Gateron as well. It's kind of more like a deep, thuddy sound. Let's take a look at the loop and film and see if it gets any better. Wow, this I think is the most improved award thus far yet. Take a look at the stock versus the loop version for the Cherry MX. That is drastic. That is a completely different switch. This is actually quite nice. It's nice and deep. It's nice and deep, and it sounds kind of more full. Now let's go back to the Gateron. The pitch slightly deepens. Yeah, the pitch definitely deepens, but it's still a very similar sound signature. In terms of scratch, there's an improvement. I won't say it's drastic from the sound profile perspective, but there is an improvement, and it definitely feels nicer as well when you lube and film it. But it's definitely usable in a soft form, if that's what you prefer. So, you know, between these two, obviously for stock, like, it's a no-brainer. That is drastic. But when you actually lube and film them, the Cherry seems to have a slightly deeper sound. But they both sound pleasing to my ears, so it's really up to you which one you prefer in terms of the sound profile. In terms of feeling, the G Pro is still a bit smoother, although the Cherry does smoothen out quite significantly after you lube and film them. So that's the Gateron G Pro 3.0 series that we have at www.lumekeeps.com. Check out the store if you like any of these, and let us know in the comments which one you prefer and what you think of the sound. Now, let's hear it on one of our keyboards. Alright, here's what it sounds on our board. That's G Pro 3.0 Yellow, Silver, Brown. So that's a stock form, and now for the lubed. Yellow, Silver, Brown. Comparing for the yellow, stock versus lubed. Silver, and now for brown. Once again, this has been Lume Keeps. Thanks so much for checking out this new Gateron G Pro 3.0 series with us. Do please like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And leave us some comments on what you think about these switches. Are these your budget king switches? Please also check out our store at www.lumekeeps.com, where you can find these switches and a lot of accessories that we use today, as well as the Keycap trays, as well as the switch trays that we've shown you guys in many different colors. Alright, take care and see you next time.